All right. Everyone just take out the latest version of your spreadsheet and we'll get started.
Is this the sales spreadsheet or the finance spreadsheet?
There is no sales spreadsheet. That's definitely the finance, so.
You sure?
Yeah, it's version 22.5.
Well, this is why you should have a sticky note system to keep track of your versioning. According to my system, 22.5 is not the most recent version. 22.5_1 is.
22.5_2 went out last night, and then Bob made some edits that he sent out with the invite. So you should be looking actually for 22.5_2.
Okay.
_1, Bob, exclamation point, $Bob.
Okay, well, the $Bob is actually not the most recent version. Just so we're clear.
How would you even know?
It's on my orange sticky note. Orange equals outdated. Orange?
Okay. Well, that
outdated.
That looks peach to me. So
Well,
I find that confusing.
Look a little higher then, because there's a peach sticky note right above it. P, priority.
Sorry I'm late. I was just in a meeting that was about this meeting, and it went a little long.
Thanks for being here. Just go ahead and take out the latest spreadsheet, all right?
But Gary is joining this meeting, right? Because he has the latest and greatest version.
I think Gary's on his honeymoon.
Look, why don't we at this point just all make sure we have spreadsheets out? Don't care what it is. Pull up a spreadsheet.
I got a few.
I'll send out the master file later.
Okay, yeah, I can set up another meeting request if you want. Is 8 hours enough time, do you think? Looks like we have availability again in 10 weeks.
Oh, jeez.
10 weeks, what's the date on that?
Just check your stickies. 10 weeks from now?
10 weeks from now. I have a vasectomy that day.
You didn't write that on the calendar.
Okay, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on this webinar. Let me just get the slides up. I want to say, first off, thank you very much for taking the time to spend with us and just talk a little bit more about budgeting and forecasting, particularly for finance, and really talk about, we know it's really quite challenging times for finance teams out there at the moment. And we want to talk a little bit more about why business planning is absolutely critical as a tool to help respond to these at this time, and talk about some of the 4 key best practices which we've got to share with you to help your business respond to the latest pandemic and generally to changes and updates which are coming to your businesses at this time. So what we got for you over the next hour or so, I'm going to do some quick introductions to myself and the Kate who've joined this call. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to why business planning is critical for your business, why I think it's one of the key tasks you need to do in this sort of time. And then we'll talk about the 4 key areas which we think enable better business planning. We're going to talk a little bit about collaboration, getting people involved, talk about the importance of driver-based forecasting and how drivers can really help enable your business planning process, scenario planning, and then reports and analytics. So that's the agenda for today. Let's quickly do some introductions on who's speaking. So first off, myself, Robert Douglas, that's me down in the corner there. I'm a regional planning director. I look after the planning part of the business for Workday across Europe. Just as a bit of background, I've worked in this space since 1992, helping companies do more with data and budgeting and forecasting, implemented a ton of different budgeting and forecasting systems. So really pleased to be able to get the chance to speak to you and share a little bit more about what we can do around budgeting and forecasting. Ikate, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Akaite Umana, and I'm part of the business finance team here at Workday. So I support our sales and marketing organizations outside of North America, and I've been with Workday for 4 years.
Thank you very much, Akaite. And what we're trying to do here is bring not only just my experience as sort of somebody who leads the planning part of the Workday business, but also a true finance person, a practitioner's sort of viewpoint. And Kate is bringing that because she actually does all the financial planning for our European part of the business. So I thought just before we went a little bit further into the content, you might need to know a little bit more about who Workday is. What that company is. You might have heard about us in the marketplace. Workday is as you can see here, a $3.6 billion revenue software company. We're part of the Fortune 50 and one of the companies really helping drive a lot of change in the world around companies' use of mainly HR systems and financial systems. So that's what we're looking to do in the marketplace, really help organizations with their back office, financial processes and HR processes. And as part of that, we've got some really great planning capabilities. And on the right-hand side, you can see We've over the time, we've got 5,200 customers using our planning solution. Really great user ratings in the marketplace. Recognized as the leader in this marketplace by third parties such as Gartner and stuff. And this is all underpinned by some fantastic technology we've built. We call it elastic hypercubes to handle some of the large data. But we've been focused on delivering budgeting and forecasting for the last 17 years. So really got quite good at it, hence the 5,200 plus customers we've got worldwide. So that's a little bit about us. What I will say just about the best practices we're going to talk about, they come from our experience of all these customers and my own experience of working with customers on budgeting forecasting. But these are best practices. So if you're only using, for example, from our video spreadsheets, you could apply a lot of these best practices into those spreadsheets. Of course, it's easier with a purpose-built tool like Adaptive. But if you want to do this on your stone tablets or back of your fag packet or on the back of an envelope, then you could probably think about using some of these techniques as well, still, these best practices. So let's talk a little bit about why we think business planning is absolutely critical for you at pretty much all times, but especially now as we face such challenging times for organizations. I think there's a little quote down in the corner. Let me just move my video so you can see that quote a little bit better. You can sort of see here that quote, I think, is really summarize it quite well. The budget is really saying where you want your money to go instead of wondering where it went. I really see budgeting and forecasting as absolutely the critical task in an organization. It's the financial embodiment of your business strategy. It says where you're going to put money. So it's absolutely critical for companies. And as we look at the changing world around us, not just driven by the recent pandemic, but all sorts of change which is coming to organizations at this moment, there's a lot of disruption. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of fast pace of change, and whether you're worried about cash flow management or dealing with a remote workforce in the latest pandemic, or digital disruptors or your competitors, I think the pace of change which we're seeing in organizations and for companies is very, very high. And budgeting and forecasting is really seen as a critical tool to help companies navigate these issues, and particularly in this time of crisis. Here I've just put a few of the quotes in from Deloitte's, PwC's and McKinsey's, really highlighting the need that forecasting, looking at the budget, looking at a range of scenarios is absolutely critical for organizations to navigate through this and look at the risks and opportunities in front of them. So this is really, a lot of organizations are saying that budgeting forecasting is a critical item to go after. And we really see planning delivering not just your response to here, but delivering to organizations business agility. As I said, it's the document which is the financial embodiment of your strategy. It says how much money we're going to spend on our marketing plans, how much money we're going to spend on R&D, how much we're going to spend on our people. Are we going to hire new people? In which departments? That is your budget. So your budget is all your departments coming together and say, this is where we're going to put our resources. And of course, as you go through your budget, you're comparing your actuals to your budget, or your actuals to your forecast. You're letting people see where we're performing well, where we're performing badly, and being able to respond to those decisions you made, those investment decisions you made, and change your path and look at those decisions is how you deliver business agility. So budgeting and forecasting really stands at the heart of making better decisions in the organization, being able to present people, this was our plan, this is how we're going, progressing against our plan, and being able to adjust that plan for changing circumstances. And when we do this well, it is a phenomenal, as this customer said, Christina Kerr, one of our customers, really said, a really radical step change. And for this particular organization here, as they went into the COVID-19 impacts, they were able to go through a number of scenarios for the CFO and the rest of the finance committee to show them what the impact would be on their organization as they dealt with the pandemic. Being able to do that very quickly in just 4 days in their particular case, rather than taking a long time to do that. So What's really stopping organizations at the moment, and what do we see in the marketplace? At the moment, we see a very static planning process in a lot of companies we go speak to. And that's because a lot of the data is siloed between different departments. All those different departments who need to get connected and share what's happening, whether sales are talking about which products are selling and they need to connect with marketing on the marketing plans, or share that information with operations so they can deliver it, or speak to HR about whether they've got the right people doing the right roles in the right place. Being able to communicate that across the organization, a lot of companies find to be a very difficult process. It's mired in different versions of spreadsheets and emailing spreadsheets around. It's siloed data in different solutions, and it's very, very hard to connect around these departments together and connect everybody together on a strategic version of the plan or a version of the plan. And so this is why I want to talk about these 4 key areas which deliver a better planning process. And we're going to explore that with you. We've got a couple of polls. Nikate is going to share her experiences of delivering that actually at Workday, because, you know, like any good software provider, we use our own solutions and we use them well, and Nikate can share how we use them. So the 4 areas we're going to look at is, firstly, collaboration. I truly believe budgeting and forecasting is about connecting those different departments, those different people together. It's people who make better decisions. It's people who need to be connected into a single plan. So we'll talk about how you collaborate around the organization. Secondly, we're going to talk about driver-based forecasting, how we can make that whole budgeting process simpler, quicker, and that ability to capture drivers and use drivers in a budgeting forecasting process, I think, is critical. And that really feeds into that third point, which we're seeing right now as critical for organizations, which is multiple scenarios. So if you've got good drivers, got a good budgeting process, and you're connecting to people, then you can very quickly look at multiple scenarios and look at balancing those risks and opportunities. Of course, once you've put together these budgets and forecasts, collaborated everybody around it, you need to do that feedback loop so you can get the better decisions. So we'll talk a little bit more about how finance people drive that reporting and analytics process. So those are the 4 areas we're going to look at. And the way we're going to go through this a little bit is talk a little bit about the subject, say, for example, collaboration. We've then got a little bit of a poll, so you can give your opinion on that. And then Nikate is going to talk a little bit about Workday's experience. What I forgot to mention was questions and answers. We're really happy to take those as we go along, or we'll try and take them in as we go along. We definitely got some time towards the end where we can pick that up. There is a Q&A box which is enabled for you. Hopefully you can see it. And if you want to put some questions in, we'd love to take those as we go along, but especially at the end as well. So let's look at the first one of those 4 subjects, collaboration across the business and engaging team. As I said, I really truly believe that budgeting forecasting has to be a people-based process. It's about connecting the sales department, the HR, the finance department, all together into a coherent plan. But as importantly as that, the people who know best about how sales are going, and of course the sales team, or the people who know best about their people, is the HR team. So you've really got to get to the coalface, the people who know best at the front line about the business. That's who you're trying to connect into that planning process. What we see, though, in the marketplace as people look to do this is really it takes a long time for organizations to do that. On average, it takes about 77 days to complete the annual budget. This is from some of the surveys we've done of the marketplace. It takes over 20 days, or around 20 days, to prepare a forecast. And actually, finance people say they spend about 83% of their time on non-strategic tasks. So that's crunching data through spreadsheets, emailing people out. So we've got these highly trained accountants and finance people there with some really good skills, but we've just turned them into spreadsheet jockeys and people just banging around data between spreadsheets. So these are some of the barriers which are really stopping people from getting connected around collaborating well on a budgeting forecasting process. The other thing which I think is important to remember is that when you're trying to connect in those different departments, it's not just about the finance view of the world. So very much we do have to pull together in the finance side a P&L balance sheet, maybe a cash flow as well, forecast, and that will be a critical part of what we need to do. But as we go talk to other businesses, it's more than just the finance numbers. So, for example, if we're talking about people, we don't really just want to collect salary information, national insurance costs, pension costs, and all the benefits and stuff. Though, of course, we need those costs. We also want to collect other things in there as well. So, it might be important for the organization to collect a skills or talent plan or, retention programs and such. And this is what's become critical now in budgeting and forecasting, making sure that we're talking that department's language and be able to capture their information. So whether sales are looking at territory planning, or marketing are looking at campaigns and programs, or IT are looking at delivering various projects, or operations are looking at demand and supply forecasts, etc. We do have to capture these different elements in the business, because in the business model, because they're all a critical part of the business. So collaboration is the first topic, which I think is really important for us to focus on. We've now got a survey, a quick poll, which we'd like to do, just to really get your opinion on how you tackle this collaboration part of things. So let me just start a poll on really how long does it take for you to do a reforecast? Really value your opinion on this. So just about to publish that. You should be able to see the poll now. I'll just give you a few seconds to go through and do that poll, or just a minute or two. I'll wait to see if we've got some answers coming in. Yeah, no, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to click on that. I can see a lot clicking through, so information's coming fast. And viewers. It's like watching a little bit of horse race, wondering which bar is going to win as such. So just, I think, coming towards the end. Okay, so I will just end that poll. You guys should all be able to, everybody should be able to see the results there. And you can sort of see quite an even, well, would you call that an even spread? 32% saying it takes them longer than 2 weeks to do a forecast, which I would say is quite a long time. 18% of people at the other end sort of saying it only takes them 1 to 3 days. So, I think people taking 2 weeks or longer, that's looking like pretty much 50%. Look, there you go. If I did the maths quickly, 50% of people doing 2 weeks or longer. I do have another poll as well. So that one, particularly people seeing how long it takes. So if we just get to the next one, which is really looking at, that's how long it takes you. Very interested to find out how many parts of the business you engage when you do that reforecast. And I think that may play into why some people are quite quick or not. So let me just have a quick, be really interested in your opinions on this one. See, somebody was very quick there and just put 100% of the business, all parts of the business, first person to answer there. What's really heartening at the moment from the responses is that I think only 8 or 9% of people sort of saying that just finance, but at the moment a lot more coming out wider. Okay, I'll just give that a few more seconds to wait for a few extra opinions. Okay, so just ended the poll, and you can sort of see here, a small percentage is keeping it within finance, which is really heartening to hear that a lot of people going wider. 53% of organisations focusing in on the key staff, so you're just getting out to get key elements of that, and then 38% of the companies sort of saying that they're going to wider. I sort of suspect sometimes that perhaps that the 38% of people are going wider, but perhaps the people also voted for that 2 weeks or longer. So it sort of takes longer to get out to more people, which is often a problem which we sort of see in the marketplace. So Ikate, interesting results here. We have got a slide with your picture on, but you're obviously turned on the camera so I can see. So I'll leave the results up just in case you want to have a quick comment on that. Really be interested to hear your viewpoint as a finance practitioner and just how Workday tackles this particular subject.
Yeah, like for us at Workday, collaboration is a huge part of our planning and forecasting process. And especially in a global company, there's so many different people that we collaborate with, and we're always looking to see how we can make it like a more efficient process, especially leveraging our own tools. So I think one really good example for us is sales planning. And that's something that we used to do in Excel before moving it into Adaptive last year. And for us, sales planning includes planning our quotas across the sales organizations and coverage and territories and our headcount for all of our sales and sales support functions. And of course, doing this in Excel is quite difficult because there are so many different stakeholders involved. We have our sales operations teams in the field and in corporate and various finance teams and sales leaders across the globe who are involved in this process. And when we try to do it in Excel, there's obviously issues with version control and knowing which one's the latest or the final. And with so many different people, having input and making edits is always really difficult. And we would spend so much time trying to reconcile different versions of the sales plan. So it's great when we did this in Adaptive for the first time because our business partners were able to go directly in the tool and update their plans on their own, really, with just a bit of support from finance. And that was possible because Adaptive is quite user-friendly and intuitive. So they didn't have, a hard time kind of moving off of Excel into the system, which is a great win on both sides, especially for finance, because we were able to reallocate a lot of our time that we would have spent like reconciling versions to really supporting them on more of the strategic planning. So like helping them think about, do they want to enter into new markets or new countries or new industries, and support them throughout that process and support them with the execution of that. So it really kind of elevated our business support, which was really great. And, even, within finance, Adaptive helps with collaboration in different ways. I work with a team that's based in the US and I'm based in Ireland, and we have finance people based in the UK and in Australia. So really quite geographically dispersed. And, in our previous planning tool, if I made a change to the forecast, I would always get an email in the middle of the night from my US colleagues asking, well, what did you change that for? And kind of having to explain over email was always quite difficult. And in Adaptive, when we update our forecasts or our plans, we're able to leave notes directly in the system. So our colleagues across the world can easily see, if we've made a change to the forecasted plan, exactly what that change is for. So it's really helped not only collaboration with our business partners in different parts of the business, but even with finance, it's really kind of streamlined our collaboration and how we work with each other.
No, perfect. And thanks a lot for that insight, Katie. Yeah, very much agree with you. It's that, how do we get, I'm trying not to use the phrase anymore because it's been used too much, single version of truth, but that has been one of the critical problems with spreadsheets, which is, which version are we on, emailing it around, keeping everybody, being able to go to a single source of the truth is important. And when you get away from the spreadsheets, you free up so much time from the finance staff, from having to crunch the numbers and reconcile spreadsheets as such. Yeah, definitely some really critical points. As you said as well, ease of use is, as you get out to those wider people, you've got to make sure it's a tool which is familiar to them, something which they can engage with quite easily. Yeah. Okay, let's then move on to that second best practice which we wanted to talk about, which is driver-based models. So really be interested to, and got some polls which are coming on this, so I can't wait to hear from you out there about how your organizations deal with the budgeting models. Just want to share some of the best practices around we've seen about building driver-based models. And this is really how you communicate with those different departments. I think every organization has key performance indicators nowadays, has really thought about their business a little bit more, and obviously has drivers in their business, whether it be, for example, in Workday, just picking our example, a number of customers is a key driver for us. Retention rate is a really key metric for us because we're a cloud-based software. So that means people sign up for us for a number of years, and at the end of their contract, they get the choice of whether they stay with us or not. So our retention rate is absolutely critical metric out for us. And that will be a key driver in our models and putting that through our models. And driver-based modeling really sits here. You can see I've tried to articulate different types of models which you might see out there, whether it be artificial intelligence, which is, where you've got the program picking up your models, or you've got a more expert model where somebody's built all the formulas. But a driver-based model is really thinking about your business and what key drivers are in each step of your business, and then capturing those into your model. One of the best examples of this, or the simplest example of this, is to pick on headcount, for example. So in pretty much every model we do, we model out headcount. So you have people in the department, you have how many people you've got, and you've got some basic information about salary as such. And from that, we drive all the other calculations, whether that be national insurance, benefits, all the other costs which get associated with somebody. Say, for example, you're modeling out telephone and PC costs and other bits and pieces with that. You model all that out. What that makes it is very easy for the end users to use, because they deal just in headcount. So I've got these people in my business, they're joining, I'm giving them this much money and this much pay rise. And they don't have to go through all the other complex modeling of national insurance rates and pension rates and all the other benefits. We're doing that calculation in the background. So it makes the data entry and communication a lot easier, and the whole modeling a lot more consistent and better around the business. And if you take that sort of same principle of headcount planning, and you take it across other parts of your business, then all of a sudden you've got a better way to communicate with everybody in a way which is a lot more meaningful and relevant to them. So this slide here, which we will be sharing at the end so you can read the more detail on it, the details on it, you can see really talks a little bit more around the benefits of driver-based budgeting and forecasting. It's about getting the focus on the key bits of the business. It's about communicating with the other departments in a manner which is relevant to them, rather than just in finance speak as such. It allows the drivers itself, as we'll talk about a little bit, it allows for more agility, allows you to do quicker scenarios. So it's a lot quicker for you to go, well, what if we employ 5 new people? I can put that into the model very quickly. And of course, it ripples all the way through all the other costs and such, and maybe even through into my cash flow, because I'm modeling out how that cash leads the business to pay those people. It just clarifies the whole discussion with different departments, gives it that simplicity and transparency across the model, and really boils that down. So doing driver-based budgeting is really one of those critical steps which we think engages everybody together, connects everybody together, and allows people to have that conversation across the business about what is important. So let's just get your opinion on where your business is on driver-based forecasting. We'd love to see your view on budgeting forecasting. Let me see if I can get to the right poll. If I start to the poll, it'd be interesting to see how much of your business, how much of your budget forecast could be used but automated with the use of drivers. So yeah, are you manually applying historic rates that could be replaced with drivers in your business? It'd be interesting to see what your viewpoint is on this. Okay, I'll just give it a few more seconds just to get those opinions coming in. Okay, I think we're just about there. So I'll just publish the results now. Last chance for people to click through. Okay, so you can sort of see here, actually, the large, significant amount of people. So, if you take the middle bar, 20 to 50%, that's 50% of people saying that they could, use driver-based forecasting more. And then if you add in the 50% plus piece, that's a significant amount. So driver-based forecasting, I think, is an absolutely critical thing. You people out there on the webinar are definitely saying, yeah, this is important. Kata, yeah, it'd be interested to hear how important that is for Workday.
Yeah, it's huge, especially in my role because I support the sales team. So a lot of, the costs in my forecast and plan are headcount related. So just to kind of give an example of how we do our forecasts and budgets, we have all of our people data in Workday. So we know all of our employees and what their salaries are and like where they're located and their bonus plans. So we take that data along with all of the job rec data. So we know, what open job requisitions we have at the moment that our recruitment team is working on and what the target salaries are for those and when our recruitment team expects to have those jobs filled and in what country, et cetera. So we have all of our people data in Workday that we use in Adaptive for our planning and forecasting process. And that right there is kind of another example of how Adaptive does make it so easy to collaborate with the different organizations that do hold the data that we need for the forecast. And when we take that headcount data, we apply a ton of different drivers to them. So for example, things like payroll tax rates and PTO rates, benefits per head, and even travel. A lot of those we would just use historical rates anyways. So instead of trying to manually calculate those, we just use drivers. And we say, for example, use last year's payroll tax rate by country, or use last year's travel rate per head, and apply it to this year's headcount plan or headcount forecast. And it really does kind of automate and simplify so much of the forecasting and planning process for us. So I'd say like 80% of our forecasts and plans are, kind of driven by drivers, and that leaves just 20% that we need to manually update. So it's a huge time saver. It probably takes us about like 3 days to update a forecast just because we do use drivers so heavily and leverage all of the data that we have on our people from Workday. And that's a benefit. But another huge benefit, like Rob mentioned, is there is a lot of like consistency and transparency into how we do the forecast and the plan. It's so easy for my colleagues in the US to quickly understand what my assumptions are because I'm using drivers. So they don't just see a plan. They can go through and see, okay, well, here was her assumption on travel. Here are my different assumptions by line item. And it does create like a lot of consistency and transparency across the finance org, which is great. And even like if there's turnover on our finance team, it's so easy for, if someone else joins my team to quickly kind of ramp up and understand, well, here's the assumptions behind our plan or our forecast because we're using drivers. So it's definitely a huge time saver for us.
Yeah, no, and absolutely agree on that sort of piece. What you're saying, one of the nice things you said there was about that consistency side piece. I definitely think sometimes when people just collect the end number, like 1,000, a budget for 1,000, you're just collecting opinions. If you start to get into the drivers, you can see what they're doing behind it a little bit more. So it does help with that. And I think the other thing which drives me insane is where people have 12 columns for each of the months, and you have to put in the same number each month. I'm thinking, why are we making people do that? If you just put in the driver, then we can populate all those months, work out the month budget. So yeah,
and even throughout the year, it makes it so much easier when you have to explain your variance to plan because you know exactly how you came up with your plan or your forecast. So it's just so much easier to kind of explain, well, if we deviated from that, well, what was wrong with our assumption, or do we need to tweak our assumptions or our drivers going forward?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Okay, so that's a little bit about driver-based forecasting, and what we're going to come on to now is talking about scenarios, really about that balancing the risks and forecasts around the business, and thinking about how to manage that. And actually, I think the other two pieces which I've talked about, collaboration and driver-based forecasting, have always been out there in the marketplace. I think scenarios have been important, but right now have come the hottest subject out there, really, being able to go through this and looking at the risks and opportunities out there. Here's another quote from one of our customers, actually, just talking about the pandemic, really, and sort of saying, really, that the ability to put together multiple scenarios in really no time, and that flexibility about it has been a game changer. What we see with spreadsheets is that's pretty much one view of the world, isn't it? That's my budget, okay? That's a budget, and if you want another copy of that version, you're going to have to copy the whole spreadsheet and create another one, another set, and that can be your, say, best case or another forecast. And then if you want to compare those two together, you've got to create a third set of spreadsheet files which compare and link through those two other files to it. So it's become very hard for organizations to create multiple copies of a plan or a forecast, and it's something which really adaptive planning it really helps enable companies to do. And really, I think all organizations should start thinking seriously about having lots of scenarios. I mean, on our platform across that 5,200 plus customers we've got, in recent months, we've seen like a 30 times increase in the amount of scenarios people are creating. On average, our customers have, I think it's about 50 or 60 scenarios in their model, which they can create. You can manage all of those and keep them to one side. But I think all organizations should be thinking about having at least 3 scenarios of the budget and forecast. This is all based around those key drivers. So being able to say, well, here's our best case, worst case, and most likely scenarios for, say, our headcount model, and here's our best, worst case scenarios for our sales model. Being able to just do that is important. I put a bit of maths here about standard deviations. You don't really have to follow this, but it is important to look at your historic data there. Look at how much variance you've had, say, on sales or headcount, and perhaps capture those models. You can see it here, this sort of standard deviation, talking about 3 models, which captures up to 99.7% really of those sort of scenarios, thinking about those different scenarios there around that piece. So pulling that in, building it around the key drivers, you can do this very quickly. Just what if a few key drivers, and then you've got a new scenario. Being able to do that and put that into the system and then start to do fast comparisons is absolutely critical. The other thing which I think organizations don't do enough of when they're looking at scenarios is looking at external data. So perhaps one of the key drivers I was talking about earlier was renewal rates. So Workday renewal rates is absolutely an important key driver for us. Perhaps we will be looking at our own best case, worst cases on renewal rates and modeling that through the business. But then we might also benchmark ourselves against other SaaS-based companies and look at external data, what they're doing, because these companies do publish these stats or share these stats on their earnings call. And we can benchmark ourselves against other organizations about where their renewal rates are as well, and perhaps put that through the model and say, well, okay, where are our competitors? Or perhaps you're looking at competitive pressures or other external data. I think expanding our scenarios and bringing in external data can really help our scenario-based planning as well. But once you actually have these scenarios, what do you actually do? I've really seen over the last couple of years this rise of what you would call the business partner, the finance business partner. And I think that really reflects a sea change finance people are wanting to drive with the way they operate. They want to stop being the bean counter, the person who adds up the numbers. They want to be that business partner of the parts of the organizations. And I think scenarios are the way you help enable that. It's about how you have that discussion point, that second point on the right-hand side, about the risks and opportunities in your business. As Akate was just saying on the previous one about drivers, she was saying that you can then have a sensible discussion about opening new markets, what do we do about new opportunities and more new product lines. It's about looking at the risk and the opportunity around the business and capturing that in scenarios, and then being able to articulate that to the other departments and truly become that finance business partner. So that's why I think scenarios are critical, not just for creating them so you can talk about them with the senior execs and stuff, but also use them for the discussion points around the business about how you're tackling problems and responding to changing market conditions. So what we'd like to do now is a couple more surveys, really get your view on a couple of key factors when it comes to doing forecasting. So we'd like to see how long it takes. What's your biggest challenge really when it comes to doing a forecast? Is it the length of time it takes to do forecasting? Is it the accuracy of it which causes you bigger headache? Is it things like version control, or is it that collaboration going out to various people and doing the consolidation? So yeah, very much like to hear your viewpoint on that out there as well. Hoping, yeah, there we go. Suddenly starting to see some data come back in. So. this is one of the ones where I couldn't predict the answer really, or where you guys are going to land on this. So it would be interesting to see which particular topic comes up as a hot one for you out there, as being a challenge for you when you're tackling the forecasting. Okay, starting to see most of the data coming in, so I will end the poll very soon. Get the results out. Okay, so yeah, no, interesting here. Accuracy is one of the critical points, which is a really interesting topic. I think, as the old joke goes about budgeting and forecasting, the first thing we know about our budget is that it's wrong. Yeah, and accuracy, I think, is something which finance people and us as finance professionals really take to heart, because it's something which is built into the DNA of a finance person, having something which is accurate and auditable. So yeah, being able to capture that together and make sure you're collecting sensible opinions, I think really driver-based budgeting and forecasting is absolutely critical to that, helping you capture that consistency and drive that accuracy around a business. Collaboration coming up as a second biggest challenge, so getting around those people. I think we touched on some of those issues beforehand. It taking a long time to capture around people really doesn't allow you to respond quickly to questions, say, coming from senior management. It takes you 2 weeks to respond, to give somebody an updated forecast. That can be a bit too long, really, to the moment sort of past. So, Kate, it'd be really good to just have a quick chat with you about scenarios and how they're used at Workday.
Yeah. So I suppose even with COVID, it hasn't changed our processes a ton, because we've always forecasted on a monthly basis. So it's kind of lucky that we have adapted, because it does help us be quite an agile finance team. But one of our processes is our sales team, kind of on a weekly basis, they're constantly looking at their pipeline and what deals they expect to close, and that informs our revenue forecast. And with this kind of uncertain economy, we can kind of plan for that in advance by, for example, creating various scenarios and say, well, if revenue was to change by 10%, what do we want to do on the expense side to try and maintain our margins? And with the different scenarios, we can maybe tweak our drivers or push out hiring, or say, oh, let's squeeze travel per head a bit more, and just have those versions in our back pocket in case we need to quickly respond to changes in our revenue forecast. So I think, using different scenarios, but also having a monthly forecast process, because we are able to do it quite quickly, it really helps our finance leadership feel like they know exactly what's happening with the business, and that we're being responsible and we're responding quickly and accurately to the changing environment. So it definitely gives our team a bit more comfort when it comes to how we're responding.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that, Kate. I think scenarios, as I said at the outset when I was starting to speak about the subject, it has become the critical point. There's no end of questions which people are asking at the moment, which generally the sentence starts with, what if this happens, or what if X happens, what if something else happens, and being able to quickly push that through the model is key. I think driver-based is one of the things which will maybe do that. The collaboration piece is the other piece which will allow you to do that quickly. Yeah. Okay, right. So let's get on to the fourth subject, which best practice we wanted to talk about, which is really that reporting and analytics, which really that feedback loop, which allows you to tie this all together. The feedback loop is all about, firstly, saying, okay, we're going to measure certain things. We're talking about those key performance indicators, those key drivers in the business. We're going to review how we did against that, compare actuals to budget to the forecast, and then make some decisions. And this is where the critical step really happens. I truly believe that budgeting and forecasting, as I said earlier, is a people-based process. It's got to be people making better decisions. It's not the computer which suddenly says, oh, you're right or wrong. It's somebody who looks at the data, then makes a better decision based on it and acts on it, and then you can measure it. So the more you can go around these feedback loops, the better, and engage with people and do that. Really going through these 3 key business questions, which is, how am I doing? So how am I doing in my business? I think that's pretty much the first question. A lot of business leaders, managers look at, how am I doing? Is it good or bad? Am I doing well against my sales target, against my particular targets in my business? And then very fast on the heels of that first question, people ask themselves that second question, which is why? Okay, I'm doing really well. Why? Is it a particular product, a particular customer, a particular region, a particular person driving that? And that ability to analyze and look across the data and being able to look and see what's driving that particular part of the business is critical. And then we come to the important step is, what am I going to do about it? That question is, okay, I've seen something good or something bad. I've found out the particular reason why and got a bit more insight into it. And then I'm going to do something different. I adjust or update the budgeting forecast, perhaps hire extra people because that particular product line is going really well, or perhaps stop marketing a particular product because it's not going so well. So the reporting and analytics really has got to support those three key business questions. And I'm pretty sure all finance people bear the brunt of these questions coming from lots of different parts of the business onto them. So what we see a lot of organizations looking to do is do more self-service around those analytics and data. The variance analysis, I think, becomes critical on this. So we've created lots of these scenarios. We've got our actuals versus budget at least, but we might have other scenarios. Doing the variance analysis is important. So looking at the drivers, because now we've got drivers in the model, we can look at that price volume sensitivity. We can look at different scenarios. And of course, everybody should have a favorite graph. I've got a favorite graph, and it happens to be a waterfall chart, which I've put an image on there. They really help explain and tell the story on variances and tell you how you move from one number to another number, how we went from the budget to the actuals, or how we went from one forecast to the next. And being able to explain that to the business quickly and simply by the use of things like waterfall charts, I think is absolutely critical. And that really gives people that ability to understand the numbers very quickly. We were going to do another poll, but I seem to have lost the ability to do the poll. So what we will do is come to Kate and talk a little bit about the feedback loop and the ability to do reporting and analytics across the business. I bet you're seeing lots of demand and lots of questions for reports and analytics.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about Adaptive is that it does allow for self-service. So it kind of helps finance get out of spreadsheets and having that burden of having to send and create manual reports on some regular cadence, and really just enabling your business partners to go directly into Adaptive and get the data that they need real time. And it just puts a bit more of that accountability on our business partners, because they have access to their actuals and they know their head count versus the plan, and they really have that ownership to really run the business with the data that they need without always having to ask finance for it. So that's really great. And we have a few different options with Adaptive, which helps because if you have different audiences or different business partners with their preference, we can kind of, cater our reporting for that style. So we use discovery dashboards in Adaptive quite a bit, which there you can build these dashboards directly in Adaptive and highlight certain KPIs or metrics, or build in graphs to show different trends. And it's all like live data, so they can go in themselves and look at that anytime, which is great. And we even use that within the finance team with our CFO, and having these dashboards already built in so that our leadership always has access to high level what the business is doing. And we also use Office Connect for Excel, which is great. Being in finance, we obviously love using Excel. So it's handy that you can use Excel, but in this version with Adaptive, where you can pull in live data from Adaptive. So you still have that flexibility of creating reports in like an environment that you're comfortable with, but using live data that's at your fingertips. And the benefit of all of these is that it's all has that security that you really look for as a finance person. Instead of me having to make sure that I'm creating a version for the UK and a version for Spain or different business partners, I can create one version, and when I send it out, they'll only be able to see what they have access to. So it's great having that built-in security to our reporting tools. And really, like, all of this it just gives time back to finance. I've been in roles where you can spend like half of your time reporting, and because I don't spend really any time reporting, I can spend a lot more time with my business partners and really support them on whatever their initiatives are, whatever they need support on, as opposed to just giving them numbers all the time. So it really does help the relationship in that case. And I think even working in finance, it kind of helps extend how long you can stay in the role and how long your team's like comfortable in the role, because they're constantly learning. Like I've been in this role for 4 years, and every year is different because I'm not constantly doing like rhythm of the business activities or constantly doing reporting or spending a lot of time in forecasting. Because we have tools that make all of that so much more efficient and so much quicker, I get to spend my time just doing, projects that I find way more interesting, and like, market expansion or whatever it may be that really my business partners get a lot of value out of.
Yeah, no, that is really fantastic feedback. And you hit the nail on the head, I think, where you said you're moving away from those non-strategic tasks, which is like, okay, I've got to produce another report, I've got to produce another forecast, and you're moving into the real discussion, which somebody wants to have, which is what are we doing with the business, and which bits are we dealing with? It's a business discussion rather than having to wrangle some spreadsheets together to produce some numbers. Yeah, so it very much changes the nature of the work which you do. Yeah, so fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much for that feedback. We're getting towards the end of our time, and I noticed some people have been putting some questions in, which is good. I apologies that I haven't been able to get all the questions together, and I've lost some of them because you might have noticed I dropped off the webinar for a little bit. I think there was a Wi-Fi blip, so I lost some of the thread on those. But we'll do some of the questions which are there, and we'll see how we get on. And if everybody wants to put any other questions in, we'd love to hear them. So let's see. One of the questions we got here: if different departments can input changes themselves in the system, so you have someone in finance who can review those changes before sending out the final forecast. Yeah, you find really this person sort of saying, questioning, sometimes you find different departments are more or less risk averse, so you need that finance input to try and even up differences. If you know what I mean. I think it's a good question, because you've got, as sales, you might go out and get a sales forecast, and some salespeople might be under calling a number and other people over calling a number, and particularly in the forecast. How do you handle that sort of stuff, or how do you approve that sort of stuff in the finance solution, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we have the discussions up front. So even on the planning process, even though our sales business partners go directly in the tool and they are hands-on about putting in their headcount plans, we start the discussion before we even get in the tool. So it's more of a discussion around, before you ask for 30 extra headcount, let's look at how productive your teams are today. And it's not just about adding headcount, but like, is there anything we can invest in to make your teams more productive, or just to make sure we're getting the best kind of return on whatever investment we're making into the various teams. So we do, like, because we have that time, we can do that analysis up front and kind of come to the discussion really informed and kind of give them different data points to make sure that we are in agreement about where we think in general their plan to land, and then we put it into the system.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point. You did say different data points, and I think it's having the opportunity to capture other metrics in there. For example, this is what happened last year, and being able to do some comparisons. You can then validate people's forecasts or input and benchmark them against what they did last year, what other departments are doing, various other ratios, and that sort of brings people into a more sensible discussion. One of the other common areas which I'm seeing as a question is around data. So we see a lot of data coming into solutions like this, not just from the finance systems, but other solutions. And data, I think, as we said, managing that and wrangling that through solutions like Adaptive can be quite complex, or on spreadsheets can be quite complex. How does that handle for you, Kate? Do you connect to different data sources? How do you pull the data in?
Yeah, like, for example, for our forecasts and budgets, we pull all of our headcount data from Workday. So we know all of our people data and all our open job recs. So we're kind of getting the latest and greatest directly from our HR and talent acquisition teams to inform our forecast and adaptive. We use Salesforce as well. So when we think about some of our kind of KPIs and business metrics, we look at our expense to net new business ratio, just to kind of understand how much are we spending versus how much new business are we bringing in. So that's a mix of our adaptive and Workday data and our Salesforce data. So we definitely do use different data sources just to kind of give a better, well-rounded picture of how the business is going to our different leaders.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of our time, and I just wanted to do a quick wrap up now. First off, I'd just like to say thank you, everybody, for spending time with us. It was really good of you to take time out of your day, 55 minutes, just about the hour with us today. And that's really nice, because I know finance people are super busy. So thank you for spending time with us. And I really hope you got something out of this and understood a little bit more about how budgeting and forecasting really sits at that critical point of helping organizations respond to change, really helps organizations deliver business agility. And it is on those 4 key areas which you can work on to deliver that business agility into the budgeting and forecasting process. It's collaboration, getting all those departments together. It's in that importance of building out a driver-based forecast, multiple scenarios, and the reporting and analytics. And if you look at those areas and get those right, it can really be transformational for your organization, really deliver a lot of different benefits in terms of connecting people together, getting that more accurate forecast, being able to respond to change around the business. So if you'd like to hear anything more from us, we'd love to hear from you. You can find out more about us on workday.com. And once again, Kate and I would like to say thank you very much for joining us.